Ahoy hoy, it's Chinny Vision with a Cash and Dizzy game. The early 90s saw many Dizzy arcade games release, not the original arcade adventures where you wander around and solve puzzles. No, we had quick snacks, but before that, in the late 80s, we had fast food, and then came Panic Dizzy, Bubble Dizzy, and Dizzy Down the Rapids. Now, Dizzy Down the Rapids and Bubble Dizzy both came out of an NES game, I believe. There's a sub-game in there, and also inspired, well, Bubble Dizzy was partly inspired by the underwater sequence in Treasure Island Dizzy. Now, several sites, including the ever-reliable Wikipedia, would have you believe this game was released on the Amiga, ST, PC, CPC Spectrum and C64. There is no PC, ST and Amiga versions. It is only available for the Spectrum, CPC and Commodore 64. So if someone could go to Wikipedia and change that, that would be quite handy. You can cite Chinny Vision. Yeah, cite Chinny Vision. Why not? Starting off on the Spectrum, which has a jaunty tune on the menu screen here. 1 and 2 player options, but it is only one player after the other on the Spectrum and CPC. You're Dizzy, and yes, it's a 2-bin clone. Now, yokefolk.com says the Oliver Twins coded this. It's by the Oliver Twins. It's not. They may have come up with the idea for this. I say idea. They went to an arcade and saw 2-bin in action, but this was coded by other people. Dizzy, basically, there's a plot, and Dizzy has to go down the river in a barrel, and he can throw apples at baddies. Does one apple thrown at a baddie kill the baddies? No. It's quite often 2 or 3 apples, and you only have a limited amount of apples. Joy. Now, this is 128K Specky. There's clearly 128K music on the menu screen, but I have no in-game music, and so I can't check at the moment if there is in-game music. I might have to go check some other people running this game. Over to the Amstrad with an unattractive loading screen. Code by Paul Griffiths, graphics by Michael Sanderson. So Dizzy is sailing down a pool of black. Black! And he's sailing down very slowly. The screen on the Spectrum and Amstrad version always scrolls at the same speed, and if you get trapped at the top of the screen, you die. The music's by Alistair Brimble, so there's something good about all of this. But it is so slow. It chugs along. And it looks so bad. If you remember when I reviewed Bubble Dizzy on the CPC many years ago, the Spectrum version was bad and the CPC version was virtually unplayable. It was a really quick port, and what we have here is yet another really quick port that gets the CPC such a bad reputation, especially when the eponymous egg here started off on the Amstrad. Original Dizzy game, coded on the CPC, ported to the Spectrum. This has clearly been ported purely with the Spectrum in mind, and then just shoved onto the CPC with no care at all. It just takes too many hits to kill things as well. In 2-bin, it's one thing, as I recall, when to kill things you need to. 2 or 3 apples in some cases on here. And it's just so boring. I'm bored. No amount of jaunty tune from Alistair Brimble is going to cheer up this dismal game. You have energy and you have lives. But your energy to get sacked by the baddies because you won't be able to shoot. See, 2 missed him there. That probably would have taken 3. And you have a limited amount of apples as well, though you can recharge those. but just everything. It's like playing a game in treacle. Over to the Commodore 64. And this looks very different, and indeed it is. Because somebody could be bothered, although there's no tune when you play the game. Suddenly we have colour. Suddenly we have speed. Suddenly you control the speed the screen scrolls at. It scrolls with you, not forcing you downwards the entire time. There's a lot more visual interest. There's bridges, baddies on bridges, different types of baddies. One novel feature of all these versions of the game is when you die, you get to reposition your egg wherever you want. And look, there's some actual rapids, which are in short supply on the Spectrum and Amstrad versions so far. Because it's called Dizzy Down the Rapids, not Dizzy floats down a polluted, stinking, fetid river like it is on the Amstrad. There's some baddies in boats, and some people on hang gliders who want to kill you. Would sadly remind you you'd rather be playing Glider Rider than this, but never mind. Pterodactyl, because why not? Hippo, yeah, throw that in. Some swimmy things. More hippos. So it takes a lot of apples to kill things on this Commodore 64 version, but at least you've got time and speed to get your shots in. Badly needs some music to keep this moving along. Again, it's on the menu screen, so why is it not in the game? Back to the Spectrum. And we chug slowly down the river. The only thing making this version look speedy is the fact the Amstrad version exists. That's the end of level 1. On to level 2, and is it a different scenario? No. No, 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 no. No. Oh. Can't shoot diagonally, by the way, which also is really annoying. Which way should we go here? Which way should we go here? Let's go this way. Crocodiles. So there's no point wasting your apples when... No, I've run out anyway. When the fact you're not going to be able to kill the baddies any... Oh, dear. Can I get past this? No, I'm going to get crushed by the edge of the screen. Oh, joy. Reposition myself. I know tubing does that sometimes with weird dead ends, but... Why? You just lose a life. You just lose a life because the coders hate you. Codemasters hate you as well. Nobody at Codemasters went, lads, you know what, this is a bit rubbish. Could you go back and spend a couple more weeks polishing this up? No, what they went was, you know what, this is good enough. This fits into our Dizzy brand with the excellent quick snacks that we just put out as well. That's a really good game. Your Sinclair gave this 65%, but did point out it was a rip-off of 2-bit, and I suppose, well, on the Spectrum... Well, it's not good, is it, when you can buy 2-bit on budget by this time, probably. Over to the Amstrad, and I believe, from memory, Amstrad Action were less kind. Well, he would be, wouldn't you? I mean, look at the state of this. The river could be blue. There's no reason why the river couldn't be blue. 4 colours available. In fact, look, they've wasted red. Red could be involved. How? What? They've basically got a 3-colour playfield where one of those colours could be different colour anyway. Ah! This is just unforgivably bad. You could have all 4 colours in the playfield. You could have a blue river. Just. Why is this so terrible? Oh, look, I've done the same again. Oh. I mean, I'm getting annoyed about the graphics. Oh, we do have some red there. They've used some red. Then why is it 2-colour, 3-colour the rest of the time? Over to the C64 where some effort's been put in. There's whirlpools that come after you. And they literally do come after you. Some of them are static and some of them zoom around. And we have some more rapids. Wow. This isn't great, but it's so much better than the Z80 versions. We get down to the end of River 2. And what you get on the Commodore 64 version is a bonus section between levels. All this extra effort. And it's like tubing. You've got to go between the flags and get the points. And collect all the bonuses as well. And Dizzy shouts 1990s things like, yo. That's her one for the teenagers there. You will have seen a 2-player mode advertised on the box. The Amstrad and Spectrum versions are 1 player after the other, but the C64 version does have a tubing style 2 players at once mode. Back to the Amstrad. Coming to the end of level 2, which has taken forever. And it's just so poor. You just... oh. And on the 64, some of these later levels, you do get different layouts. You get these angular bits of the rivers where everything's at 90 degrees and you end up zigzagging through the levels. So it gives you some variety. There's so much more general polish on the 64 version. As I've mentioned earlier in this review, most people seem to suggest this game originated on the NES was one of the sub-games in the first Dizzy game on that system. However, there's another theory knocking around that says the C64 version was submitted as a tubing style game to Codemasters. They looked at the game and went, this is really good, but we need something to sell it, so we shoehorned Dizzy into it. I don't know if that's true, and if that's the case, the game possibly on the C64 predates the NES game, and therefore, you know, it's all changed around, but details of this stuff is sketchy. You'd think some of the big websites would have details of this. I can't find very much at all. But it certainly explains why the C64 version is more polished, and those Spectrum and Amstrad versions just feel like very quick and cheap ports. After all, the C64 version, if someone was developing it in their own time and submitting it on spec to Codemasters, would put a lot more effort into it than, say, a software development house who Codemasters hired to do a port. Bubble Dizzy on the C64 Spectrum and Amstrad, well, it goes from bad to absolutely unforgivably terrible. The C64 version, there's something going on here. There's just a bit more effort than you'd expect from a budget game. But there's quite a lot here. There's a lot of levels, more variation, there's a lot going on. It's still difficult and not much fun to play as well. And you have the whole 3 levels of, well, you've got energy, you've got lives, and a timer as well, because the people who coded this are sadists. The Spectrum version, it feels like an unfinished game. Level 2, Level 3, and so on that I've seen, as far as I've played it, are pretty much all the same, except the course layouts get a bit narrower. Same baddies, and it's so boring. It's just the same thing over and over again. There's no speed, and then that brings us to the Amstrad version, which is an appallingly lazy crime. It's clearly a game that's been ported in a couple of days with no optimisation at all. If you think this is bad, you should see the Amstrad version of Bubble Dizzy. Nobody at Codemasters clearly cared. The game is running through treacle, it looks appalling, and it has all of the no fun aspects of the Spectrum version. There's so much more I could say that I dislike about this game, but the biggest thing and the only thing you need to know is all the time you're playing this, you're just thinking one thing. I'd rather be playing tubing.